the agenda. Is there public comment?
I have no hands raised.
Okay, very good. We'll move on to agenda changes. If there are none, we have the consent calendar. I'll accept the motion to approve the consent calendar.
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion second, roll call, please.
Councilmember Washington,
Yes.
Councilmember Oro,
Yes.
Councilmember Joseph,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Abadamos,
Yes.
and Mayor Garcia.
Yes, thank you, Council. Moving down on now to our business item number 3, property exchange with Napa Valley Unified School District.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The item tonight is a follow-up to one of the meetings we had in June where we provided notice of this potential property exchange. The agreement with the school district provides an opportunity for both entities to exchange properties that we are involved with now and kind of swap out our interests for the other's property. The city on the receiving side would be the beneficiary of the former Napa Junction Elementary School at the end of Napa Junction Road. That property is approximately 6.5 acres in size and contains the buildings that used to house the elementary school. The new elementary school is located off of Eucalyptus Drive, and the new elementary school has been there for about a year now. On the exchanging side, the city is already in partnership with the school district on what is known as the Community Center American Canyon Middle School Gymnasium building. It's actually an L-shaped property that includes the aquatic center, the skate park, and some area behind the skate park as well. And so as a part of this transaction, the city would exchange out its interests in the gymnasium building specifically, and the school district would be the sole owner of that facility prospectively. Right now, we co-own it and maintain it, et cetera, with the school district. And as we discussed back in June, really both parties finding it in our interests to take on these other properties and to give up our interests in the exchange properties. And among the reasons that the city's interests are served by obtaining the former elementary school property is that we were able to implement portions of our circulation element, most notably the extension of Napa Junction Road up to Hess Drive. That's one of the future roadways identified in our circulation element. And the land where the former school sits is a kind of an unusual shape and includes a small strip, frontage strip where this new road will be located. That property also happens to be located immediately south and adjacent to the existing Little League field. And so we think there's really an opportunity to look at some combined uses there or some other possibilities as you start to assemble those properties. In the very near term, the buildings that are there can be reused for a variety of public purposes, but over a longer term, we would engage the public in a planning effort to decide what that and the Little League property should eventually become. And so what could be done there? No decisions have been made on that longer future, just the opportunity of a blank slate really with those two combined properties exists. And that's particularly exciting, I think, for us. As it relates to the area behind the gymnasium building that the city would be exchanging out of, there is the skateboard park that is there. And so that would have to get relocated. That's on part of the property that the school would be having outright ownership of, and they've indicated that they do not want the skateboard park there. So that's in a very unique or cumbersome location, and moving the temporary skate park is really probably something that's in everybody's interest to begin with. On Thursday night, the Parks and Community Services Commission is going to be evaluating potential options for where the skateboard park could go. And so we expect the City Council will have their recommendations in very short order. We've already been in touch with the manufacturer of the skateboard, or at least a contractor who's done some more recent work on it. They've indicated that the facility is of a sufficient condition to move. So Those plans are already in the works. As a part of this agreement, there's no money that's going to be exchanging hands. Each party's been responsible for the administrative costs on its own end, and neither property will be buying or selling or anything like that. It's just a pure exchange from one to the other, and the properties are going to be exchanged in an as-is condition, meaning there's not, a set of improvements or what have you from either side that have to be done first. There's also a part of this agreement, the city has agreed to, as a part of its general plan process, start to consider some other school district properties and their potential uses. The city's draft general plan is the subject of a notice of preparation of an environmental impact report. And in that notice of preparation, there are 2 district remnant parcels that are identified for a residential zoning designation. Those are the lands immediately adjacent to the new elementary school, the new Napa Junction Elementary School, and the land immediately adjacent to the American Canyon High School. And so no decision, of course, has been made on the general plan either, but what we committed to was studying it as part of our general plan process, and that studying has begun. The council's not agreeing to rezone those properties, just merely the study of them for these potential uses. You retain your authority to decide whatever land uses you want to have at the end of the day at those properties, and that'll transpire as a part of the general plan process. The Planning Commission reviewed this potential agreement and this land exchange back at their May 26th Planning Commission meeting. And there they found that the proposed idea was what's known as a general plan conformity. So basically, because both properties that are being exchanged are currently zoned for public use, currently used for public use, and in the future would remain zoned for public use and used for public use, that all of that was a determination that fed into their general plan conformity findings. So those findings are attached to the staff report, as are all the exhibits and the agreement itself, showing where these properties are and their boundaries, et cetera. So happy to answer any other questions or comments if the council has any.
Questions or comments from council? Anybody with a hand raised? Councilmember Oro.
Yeah, I think this has been something that we've been discussing for a while. I think we previewed it to the public and all. The one thing I have a question about really is we're moving this resolution forward. We're putting it in our general plan. We sort of come to an agreement, but where's the district on this, and where are they in their process, and when will this get done?
Yeah, appreciate the question, Councilmember. Our hope is that the school district will be bringing this to their board at their meeting on August 25th. We've been working with their staff over the summer to get the description of the city exchange parcel, that's parcel Y, as we call it, get that identified. The existing property, like I mentioned, is L-shaped. We're not exchanging the entire L-shaped property. We're carving off a piece of it, and that piece has the gymnasium building and a skateboard park, but it's not the whole L shape. So we had to go through with the surveyor. We met with district officials to really set the boundaries of what that new property was going to be. So we've been working with them on that, and that has been finalized as really of today when we got the final wet signed plat and legal descriptions from the surveyor. We've been working with district staff to address issues related to a PG&E agreement that we have for use of the gymnasium as a community resource center, as well as exceptions to title and other administrative things. So those pieces aren't done yet. It's possible the district will have some additional changes to the agreement that they would like to propose. The resolution tonight staff is recommending provides some flexibility in that if there's some changes that might be needed to satisfy the district council or the district administration, then I would have the authority to modify that agreement subject to the city attorney's approval without having to go back to the city council. So in short, we're hoping August 25th is the date we're able to have the district bring that to their board.
Yeah, but what about putting sort of a time certain on this. It seems like we've been dragging this on for a while here, and I know we're trying to move quickly, but is there a way that we could put a deadline on this to where it's good for a certain amount of time, and then we'll have to revisit, like sort of a deadline to get this to get them to act?
Yeah, I think my recommendation would be to see if this actually gets put on the board agenda for the 25th. I think the agreement as it is right now is okay, and we will know, either on the 19th of August or potentially on the 22nd of August, whether or not the district is intending on bringing it on the 25th. If not, my recommendation would then to bring this back to council as an update on September 6th and decide what we want to do. I don't know that we need to amend the agreement to put in language to that effect. I think if things don't go as planned on the 25th, then staff can bring this back for an update on September 6th, and we can decide where to go from there.
Yeah, isn't this predicated on a lot of things with regards to the Oat Hill project too, in terms of what needs to happen over there? And I know that we've been getting interest from developer on that, even though this is a city and NDUSD issue. But I know, I think what started this off was that access road on Teresa, right? And wait, is that the right road? No, what's the
Napa
name?
Junction.
Napa Junction.
Junction Road.
Right,
Yeah.
access to that. And I know that there's a housing element going on there, and I don't know if that is holding anything up.
No, I appreciate you bringing that up. And in fact, I forgot to even mention a really important part of this agreement. Although they're not a party to this agreement, the developer of the project you mentioned, the Oat Hill project, has agreed to advance the school fees that they would pay. Ordinarily, those fees are paid at the time building permit is issued. At this point, we expect that to be late December, January timeframe. But the developer has agreed at the district's request. The developer has agreed to advance those fees to be paid at time of closing, which we're hoping to be August 30th. I think you're right that this land exchange is a means for which our circulation element can be implemented through the extension of Napa Junction Road. The developer of the Oat Hill project is conditioned to build that improvement as a part of access to their property. And so there are many ways. Currently, there aren't sufficient property rights for the developer to implement that condition of approval. And there are many ways that those property rights could be obtained. The developer themselves has attempted to acquire the rights outright from the school district. Those efforts were rebuffed by the school district, and we entered into a process where we've been trying to work on this property exchange, because that would achieve, it would, in addition to exchanging the properties, would also provide the property rights necessary to build the road. I think we'll certainly know more as we approach August 25th. And that's why my recommendation would be to see where things go up to the 25th, and then bring back an item to council on September 6th.
Yeah, I mean, my only concern is it's like it's kind of been dragged on, but then you first of all, it's another thing to give the school district, right? So we're looking at the general plan, we're doing this exchange. There's $1 million in fees that they're going to get ahead of time before even building. And then you mentioned the date of August 30th, which if nothing happened and went to September 6th, it seems like that throws everything off in terms of what needs to happen there.
Well, what I mentioned for August, so the hope is that the school district is able to take this agreement to their board on the 25th. If that happens, they would sign the agreement. The documents would get placed into escrow, and then the recording would happen the following Tuesday on August 30th. So that's why I mentioned that date.
Oh. Yeah, I don't know. It just seems like there's a potential for this to be dragged out, considering it's summer and the school's going to start, and there's have a lot on their agenda, I'm sure. The board. Thank you.
Potentially.
Councilmember Joseph, question, comment?
Yes, I want to follow up on Councilmember Oro's comments, maybe from a slightly different angle, and that is, well, first of all, I too would like to see this thing resolved by the end of the month. And I have to appreciate and compliment staff. I think staff's been doing as much as they can do in a two-sided agreement to expedite this. So I do appreciate what we've been doing. I am a little concerned that the school district doesn't seem to have the same sense of urgency that we do. But for that right of way, there probably isn't any, intrinsic urgency. But to that extent, if I'm not mistaken, I think we approved something a couple of months back that set in motion an obligation to pursue eminent domain if we don't have things resolved. And I think maybe the city attorney can clarify what the time frame is for that, because I think early September will be the 120 days. So it could be that the real urgency is if we don't have it resolved by the end of August, we may be forced to trigger an eminent domain action, which nobody really wants to do, but there comes a point where we are legally obligated to do things. So if there could be some clarification on that eminent domain obligations that we have.
I think you're correct, Mark. It's in early September when that comes up. I think the concern is, and it's addressed in the agreement, it's on, I think it's packet page 27, agreement page, or agreement paragraph 8. We provide for that consideration by the Napa board on the 25th and then recording by the 30th. That's our understanding as to the deadline date that's needed for the development to proceed.
Okay.
And if
So-
that doesn't happen, then it comes back, and then the next step would be the initiation of the condemnation proceeding. You're correct.
So from my perspective, I would agree that we need to move this along, and it doesn't appear that there's any substantive issues. There's nothing, no deal breaker out there. This is just a matter of, you got to go through the motions to get it done. And I would strongly recommend that we focus on August 30th as kind of a drop dead date, because by the next meeting, there should be something on the agenda triggering either popping champagne for making the deal go down, or talking about initiating litigation.
Happens, there won't be much of an update that will come back to the council. I'll, be giving you an update letting you know that we're proceeding to close on the 30th, but it won't be a public agenda item at a council meeting. If that doesn't happen, you can be assured that we will be back in front of you on September 6th with, seeking further direction on what to do. And I anticipate, if this doesn't go to their board on the 25th or it doesn't get recorded on the 30th, we will be hearing from the developer, the party to that other agreement that you referenced, Councilmember Joseph, where, they will be asking us to take action for that agreement. So, regardless of whether we change the document tonight, I don't think that particularly matters. You will be hearing from us, from staff on the 6th with an agenda item if this doesn't go forward as we hope.
Okay. Councilmember Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Holly, I also agree that staff did an outstanding job on this resolution. And I think that we had made some headway, or I thought that we made some headway with the Napa Valley Unified School District, especially from a relation standpoint and communication standpoint. Has things kind of stalled with you and their leadership?
I don't know if I would use the word stalled. I think, it's been a busy summer for everyone. It's been an area of focus for me to get some of these administrative pieces done. In particular, the city exchange property had to be created. What I mean is the boundary had to be created. It wasn't a simple, deed swap. The district exchange property existed already as a rectangle with a legal description. So it was simple to put in as an attachment. But for our purpose, we had to create the square or the rectangle. And so that took a lot of administrative effort. That was something the city led because we weren't giving them the whole L shape. So certainly I spent a lot of time. I did have a lot of cooperation with the district staff as we worked through those details. There are other administrative details like the title report and working on the PG&E agreement. Again, the PG&E agreement, it relates to the property that the city is exchanging, and we think we've got some progress with PG&E, but we're still waiting on some comments from the school district. So, I wouldn't necessarily use the word stalled, but there is at least 3 or 4 to-do items that are going to need to get pulled together before the 25th. I'm an optimist that it can get done, but it's going to take a lot of focused effort. So I'm hopeful that that they're willing and able to do that. And if it doesn't come to pass that way, then the council will be hearing from us on the 6th.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Holly.
Yeah, I think we all kind of share the sense of frustration with this process. And certainly having to map out the portion of the property the school district we're exchanging with certainly took some time as well. But I'm also would remind all of us, it's the developer does have access to the property. It's just a bit roundabout. And it's certainly the preferred way is to have a Napa Junction Road connecting through that portion of the property that we've been discussing for some time. But we'll stay on top of it, I'm sure, with Mr. Holly, and we'll certainly have a plan of action should school district not have some encouraging information for us, for example, an agreement on the 26th. Well, thank you. Anything further on this, Mr. Holly?
There is a recommendation and a resolution, Mayor.
We got a recommendation and 2 resolutions to move here, so. Okay.
Do we have to open up public comment, or can I?
We need to take public comment, certainly. Anybody from the public?
I have no hands raised.
All right, thank you. Back to City Council for further discussion, desired action.
There's no other questions. I'd like to make a motion on resolution number 22 or 2022 next in order, a resolution approving the property exchange and acquisition agreement to transfer approximately 5.6 acres of land where the community center / gymnasium is located to the Napa Valley Unified School District in exchange for receiving the 6.57 acre property where the former Napa Junction on Elementary School is located on Napa Junction Road. From the Napa Valley Unified School District.
Motion second. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Washington,
Yes.
Councilmember Oro,
I'm gonna vote yes, but I want to make sure that the city manager heard the concerns around that time frame, and the need to get this done. We're giving you the opportunity to make any small changes about coming back to council, but the urgency is there.
Councilmember Joseph,
Yes, and I would ditto that same editorial comment as far as urgency.
Vice Mayor Albadamos,
Yes.
and Mayor Garcia.
Yes, thank you, council. Next we have is a resolution of general plan conformity.
Mayor, that was just an attachment. We don't need to take action on that. That was a planning commission, correct? That was
Okay.
just an attachment.
All right. Well, that's good to know. Anything else needing to be done on this item?
No, Mayor.
Very good. Move on in our agenda to our next item.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This next item, item 4, relates to the Napa Logistics Park project, Napa Logistics Phase 2 project. Sorry. I do know that Erica Smithies, our Public Works Director, has prepared a short presentation for the council, and while Teresa is bringing Erica over as a panelist, I'll note that the Napa Logistics Park project has been a very successful project in the city and really cut some new ground as far as to what was even possible. Way back in early 2010s, 2012 was when the property, I think, first transacted from its former owner, and the Phase 1 building was built, and then at the same time the Phase 2 process began. And at the beginning of that process, the developers envisioned actually an auto manufacturing facility. At the time, they thought there might be an electric vehicle manufacturing assembly facility with a paint booth and everything else, a very intensive use in that area. And so as they began scoping out the entitlement, they decided to create a very broad environmental document and environmental impact report, and it covered, kind of a worst case scenario from environmental impacts. And that scenario was played out as this industrial auto manufacturing. What has turned out over the years to come forward is something quite a bit different than what was contemplated in the EIR, quite a bit less impactful, and still very cutting edge. IKEA having their e-commerce distribution facility there, Amazon having distribution center there, Biagi, others having it, and then PG&E is the last building. They're planning to have a corporation yard / administrative center there for their engineering and technical people. So quite a spread of kind of diverse uses, something that's really not found elsewhere in the Napa Valley. And so really quite a successful project. But as that project looks to wind down and to transition to permanent owners and move on, there's some modifications that staff is recommending to a variety of their agreements. And I'll let Erica and Bill kind of take it from here. But it's kind of interesting to go back and look at what we thought at the time in 2013, 2014, and how things have transpired till now. Erica and Bill, take it away.
Sure, I'll jump in here about at least the South Kelly Highway 29 improvements. Good evening, Mayor, council members, community.
Good evening.
Erica Smithies, Public Works Director, here tonight to share a little PowerPoint showing some visual imagery. It's always hard to talk about intersections and turning movements without actually having a map. So bear with me a minute here. So here's the trip generation that City Manager Holly was just talking about. You can see the pre-project of 2015, and then the total trips, the updated net new trips from December of 2020 with the revised PG&E facility going in versus a car manufacturer. Our estimated number of trips went from 9,263 vehicles per day down to 5,119. And these trip generations are brought in. We do have the traffic engineer, Bob Grandy with Fair and Piers on the call too, if you have specific traffic questions. And I know Ernie Odell at Orchard Partners is also available for additional comments. But you can see there's really a lot, net fewer trips just from Building 5 site alone that created triggered this reduced project for the intersection of Highway 29 and South Kelly Road. Here,
Director Smithies,
yes.
could you go back to that really quick?
Yes.
Explain to me what was the expected and what the total was at the bottom down there, 929,263. Is that what that is?
Correct.
And now we're only getting 4,100 out of there. I mean, the difference is 4,100, correct?
Yes, correct. And I don't show the original build out generated trips. I guess it was going to be 600 plus, so about 1,400. There was going to be a lot more trips per day at the full build out of the original project. I did not provide that original trip. It just shows the total of the reduced trips. I could probably pull that up here, but it would take me a little bit to find it. But this was the big difference. There's a lot of charts that I could provide you, but I was just trying to get to you to the summary here of why we're here today. Based on the 2015 EIR, it brought us to this huge project that's modeled after the Jameson Canyon Airport Boulevard Highway 29 intersection with the multiple turning lanes on not only on Highway 29, but it added additional left turning movement lanes on South Kelly on both sides of South Kelly Road. With the reduced trips, it greatly, I don't know if you guys have had a moment to see this big project. It shaved down with the reduced trips to only requiring a southbound Highway 29 right turning movement on the South Kelly, and then a longer northbound left turn lane on the South Kelly Road from Highway 29. It greatly reduced the need for on Highway 29. However, South Kelly still needed an additional lane for turning movements and a road widening on the south side of the road. So it went from 4 lanes down to 3 lanes, full build out with the reduced trips. So there's still a lot of trips on South Kelly, but not as many as there would have been if it had been the prior project in 2015. Traffic impact fees have been paid to date. Those aren't being refunded to Orchard Partners. PG&E also has nothing's been changed here. But they've told the date's been paid as $3 million on their traffic impact fees for their projects out there at the industrial park. And that's all I have on the actual intersection improvements. If you'd like me to go back to any of the graphs, you have specific questions or traffic engineering specific questions, we do have Fair & Peers on board to answer anything more that detailed than I can answer. And then Bill would like to go in, or oh, there's hands up, sorry.
I think the thing that I'd like to add for the council is we had to rely on a new initial study with respect to this reconfiguration of the intersection and the traffic computations, which is enclosed as the initial study. And then that served as a basis so that because of the reductions, we can rely on that information assessed under the vehicle miles traveled rationale for an addendum to the 2015 adopted environmental impact report. So that's the basis of the environmental analysis. It's a little bit unusual, but the timing drove that. But it's fully supported and integrated with then the specific provisions and the modified improvement agreement that's also reflected as a portion of the resolution, which would comprehensively modify this project and finish it. So I think conceptually that would be what I would add. There's a different type of compliance, and you can see by the date of the initial study that was just concluded, that was necessary then to utilize an addendum. It's an unusual portion of CEQA then to ensure that this modification to the project complies with CEQA.
Questions, Councilmember Oro?
I think Councilmember Joseph was first.
Councilmember Joseph?
Okay, well, first of all, thank you. A couple of questions. Number one, my understanding is that this will be a city project that and to that extent, questions about timing, when do we think we'll get this done? And whether or not we're talking, I don't read blueprints that well, but my concern is that when this project's finished, are we going to repave both sides of the road, even if we aren't modifying the north side that much?
It's been part of the discussion that we partner with the county on the north side of that South Kelly center line, but yes, it definitely should be paved together. But trying to get money from the county to help with their share of the side of the road would be great.
Okay.
May not happen, but but the entire stretch needs to be repaved.
Right. And then timing in all of this?
This is included in your 5-year CIP that you just adopted on June 21st. I believe it's in year 2023, which is just like starting this year, but it'd be at least a 2-year process because of the Caltrans work that needs to happen. And approaching permit.
Then the only thing is a little more rhetorical, and that is when we talk about AM and PM peaks, what I've noticed, I think everybody's noticed over the last 5 or so years, the PM peak at least has spread out to the point where it's kind of like from 1:30 till 5 or something is a PM peak. I guess it's a good thing that we're using transportation or transit demand management or whatever, but it does seem like the peak is spreading further and further. And so is there any way we can document this, or how does this impact our analysis going forward? Because it does look like the numbers are certainly working in our favor, but it could be that the peak period has just widened itself out and that some of those trips are happening, prior to the official peak hour, if that is making sense.
I believe it all kind of rolled with the new vehicle miles traveled versus the old school level of service. And I've noticed a change. I commute that direction in the evening hour, and it's definitely changed. From my perspective, like it's not as backed up as I don't know if it's still a COVID condition, but even a year ago, the traffic was backing up to the airport, and now it's not so dense that between the 4 to 6 o'clock hour. So I don't know what's changing that, or people are changing their driving patterns, but we also do need a monitor out there. That was part of the conditions of approval of the project. So there'll still be monitoring of vehicle trips happening on that segment of Dublin. But it's something we got to keep eye on.
Something I'll just add to that, if you don't mind, Councilmember Joseph. The nature of the plateauing of the peak hour has been noted here and elsewhere. We collect fees. Our traffic impact fees are based on daily trips. So whether it's a trip at 2 in the morning or 2 in the afternoon, the amount of the fee that we collect is the same. So that plateauing, if you will, doesn't have an effect on the amount of fees that's collected, but it does have an effect on the improvements that you design. Because if you have, if your peak is not as extreme, but you have a longer plateau, the improvement that you need can vary or can change. And so part of the discussion about what's the appropriate improvement now at that intersection is based on the information that's there, the trips that are being generated by Napa Logistics that we've measured, the existing volumes that are on the highway, and that's what's proposed as a part of this addendum.
Okay. Like I said, my only concern is that if the peak is moved to like 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock, and that's when the biggest traffic is happening, and we're still using 4 to 6, we may be thinking we're solving a problem, but it's just because the problem squidged and has moved around, and we're just not tracking it. So, and that's kind of a rhetorical observation more so than anything relating to this project, but I think it's something to look at and be concerned about. Thank you.
Councilmember Oro.
Yeah, thank you. A couple questions. Do we have to do this? Can we stick with the original agreement?
What I would say is that we have new evidence now that supports doing something different. We have the environmental document that was done in 2015 that assumed roughly 11,000 daily trips, and it was modified in 2017 that assumed 9,000 trips. And as this project has been built, now more like 5,000 trips. The general principle is you can't make developers over mitigate or fix problems that they haven't caused. And sticking with the original agreement would have them building an intersection that is much, much bigger and a much more costly and much more substantial improvement than is proportional to what the effect that they were having on the environment. So the reason that we're coming back with this recommendation is to be consistent with those development standards and that area of the law that says you can't make a developer fix problems from others or make them do more than what they're already contributing. And the science behind what has been shown in the traffic study in the addendum measured actual vehicles. We've gone from the theoretical, like I mentioned in 2015, we thought this was going to be an auto manufacturing facility, and now we know it's played out different. So we have actual data now, as opposed to the forecasting tools that were anticipated back when the original idea was contemplated in 2015. So, I think maybe Bill wants to chime in here, but to be consistent with the area of law that says you can't make developers over mitigate or make them do something above and beyond what the effects that they're having, generally you need to do something that's consistent. But I'll let Bill kind of chime in if he has a more legal way of explaining it.
Yeah, the way I'd say, Councilmember, is that both the intensity and density of developments changed, and it's a established principle of development that there's a nexus between the intensity and density of development with respect to a proportionate share in the improvements that they were required to do. And because of these reductions, relocations, and different uses, we do have a reduction in the original project that requires then a reduction in the mitigation measures and the requirements to be implemented in the improvement agreement, which are reflected in the plans. So I would join with the city manager in explaining it that way. They're bearing their fair share of a less intense and a different density of project than originally approved.
Which legally requires us to modify the intent of that intersection or the plan?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So my concern isn't 2015, the numbers. My concern is the 2025 numbers. We're right now, there's a project out there in vacant land between Green Island Road and Devlin Road extension, I guess, really. It's going to add like 2 million square feet of additional warehousing and traffic, which may cause, South Kelly to be needing that sort of hyper improved, if you will, intersection. How do we plan for that?
No, that's a really great point, Councilmember Oro. That particular project is currently undergoing its own environmental review. There's a draft EIR. It's been circulated for comment, and the two need to be integrated. So the ultimate disposition of what happens at South Kelly, both interim and ultimate, needs to consider what's going to happen with that undeveloped land as it develops. And that environmental review is happening right now. It hasn't been concluded yet. The environmental report's not completed. It's not adopted. But as we study that EIR, it needs to analyze the trips from that project and then decide what needs to happen there at the South Kelly intersection. So that those two will be integrated. But should there be a need for additional improvements beyond what is the subject tonight that would be caused by that on those vacant lands, they would then bear the cost of making those additional changes and those additional either turn lanes or additional improvements. They being the developers of that raw land, not the Napa Logistics developers.
Well, I know how molasses moves, and I know how things move around here sometimes. If that moves forward in that plan and as they're building, pretty sure that South Kelly intersection, given the needs of the commitment that we need from the county to do the north side of it, is it possible that what I guess Gianovi does can be built and improved at the same time, depending on that report? I mean, like we would adjust to that at the same time, right? If we hadn't built our improvements of the road yet.
Yeah, it's a conversation that we're going to be having with those developers, because you're right. It could be to their advantage to become part of the city project that we're talking about tonight. If their project looks at that as a baseline condition and determines maybe another turn lane is needed, rather than waiting until their project was ready and the development triggers in their project happen for that second turn lane, they might find it to their advantage to reimburse us ahead of time and have that additional lane put into the equation now. That's a conversation that we're going to have with them. But at the same time, they're looking at, a very, very challenging development environment, and their project is going to receive a lot of scrutiny. So they may not be willing to advance those funds because of the uncertainty around their development. But we're going to have that conversation with them, and that's what the environmental review period that they're under is for.
Okay, and then just Erica, could you pull up the presentation one more time and show me what the actual improvement will look like? Because it gives me pause. I could see it being scaled down. I just don't want it to be scaled down too much. And what am I looking at right there? 29 is above, and what's below me? Or both of them?
So 29, that is the northbound approach right here. That is the northbound left turn lane. It's going to be extended. And then on the southbound, we're going to add a right turn. I don't know about you, but I use that right turn to go to the Devlin Road Station from where I'm coming from Napa. So it'd be nice to have that protected pocket in there, making a right-hand turn.
And how long is that?
Looking at it, it's several hundred feet. And if you look at the plus signs on here, we just do the estimate. About 600 feet, or tapering in about 550 on the southbound leg.
Okay.
And I think the north turn lane is about double what it is now.
So those are the 29 improvements. The South Kelly improvements.
South Kelly, you're going to have a right turn designated lane, and then a through lane, but also 2 left turn lanes. So you're going to have a designated left turn lane, and then the through and a left turn.
Okay, so 3 there.
And it was going to be 4 originally, like 2 designated left turns, 1 through and 1 right, but now it's going to be a combined through and left turn.
Yeah, I can live with that. Okay, thank you. And then the only other thing, to keep in mind is in this new development that's being proposed, Jason, there's also an opportunity to help fund the West Side Connector, which will probably take some traffic off of there too. Thank you.
Just looking at the proposal there, trying to think of the airport had an extended left turn lane at Airport Road 29. No, it doesn't seem to be sufficient enough during commute hours. Something to remember. Also pointing out on the traffic count on, well, if we're looking at 29, a lot of that's dependent on what's going on Highway 37, because the alternate route out is back to Vallejo is 121 to 12 to 29 and down through American Canyon. So our evening count actually is higher than our morning count. And that's something considering that factor as well. But I notice it's extending longer hours as well. With that, Vice Mayor Abudamos.
Sorry, I'm trying to unmute. It looks like Councilmember Joseph's hand is up before mine.
Okay, Councilmember Joseph.
Yes, but I've already talked. So Vice Mayor Abudamos ought to go, and I'll go after her.
My comments were just really brief. I understand the law, and I understand not making a developer fix more than they've messed up, for a lack of better words. But I just feel like this is a little bit premature because we're not in normal times right now because of COVID. I think Ms. Smithies mentioned that traffic is a little bit less busy, and it could be because of COVID. I think a lot of people are still working from home and not spending time on the roads. Also, Councilmember Oro mentioned the new projects, and we still haven't even had conversations with them on the improvements that we're going to require of them. So maybe wait until we've had those conversations and see how we can bring everything together. Also, if I remember correctly, this intersections improvements it wasn't just on Napa Logistics, right? Wasn't there another project that was also supposed to pay into this? So what's changing there?
There's nothing that's changing. Both this project and what's known as the Napa Airport Commerce Center project, which is principally located at the southwest corner of the South Kelly Highway 29 intersection. Both of these projects were required to make improvements at this intersection, and both were required only to pay their fair share, as Bill mentioned, a pro rata share of it. And so the amount of reimbursement, or the amount of reimbursement, we've estimated the cost of the project, and then the developer of the Napa Logistics project will be providing a reimbursement based on their fair share of that, but it's not 100% because, again, this other project that you noted is also responsible for a component of that. So, so that's you're right. It is the NACC project currently owned by Panattoni Corporation that would be also contributing to the project cost.
And that would be contributing to the scaled down project cost now if we scale it down. For me, I'm just very reluctant to scale down any traffic mitigation measures because I know how horrible traffic is on Highway 29. We've lived it for many, 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 many years. So the fact that now it's not as bad as normal leads me to believe that it's COVID related or something out of the ordinary is going on. And I'm very uncomfortable with, I feel like it's just premature at this point.
Just if it helps, Council Vice Mayor Abudamos, it's based on trip generation, based on industry standards been around for 60 plus years, the number of trips going. So if outside the hours of people are traveling, maybe that are different post-COVID or pre-COVID, the trip counts that are reduced are based on industry standards of the amount of people working at those facilities or traveling to and from the facilities. That is a calculated number of trips generated by the people that are expected to go to those facilities. So that number is the same whether it's COVID or not COVID. People
I think it might be good. I think it might be good if we had the traffic engineer, Bob Grandy from Fair and Piers, kind of explain some of the mechanics of how the latest numbers, how the traffic study supports the notion of the proposed improvements, which are of a smaller scale than was originally contemplated. Teresa, would you mind bringing Bob Grandy over, please?
And I also have a follow-up question then. What if the warehouses are eventually sold and do become heavy traffic generators and we did scale back the intersection? Then what? At that point, do we go back and have the new owner improve the intersection some more? Or like, how does that work?
Yeah, sure. I can touch that, answer that question. So, there are a couple of four existing buildings in Napa Logistics, and then a fifth one under construction. If the uses were to change in the future to a more intensive use that involved more vehicle trips, that would involve an entitlement process. And so, the example that comes to my mind, again, IKEA, with all the infrastructure they put in their building, probably not going to be changing. And as the technology evolves for e-commerce, again, you're not looking at more people, you're looking at more robots. But the Biagi building, as we call it, I think it's building 3, primarily a more traditional storage building. And you could say, okay, well, what if Biagi decides to move on, Amazon moves into that building, then what? Then we would go back through an entitlement process. They would approach us, they would be getting a different use permit, and we would go through the analysis to say, okay, these are additional trips are happening, some additional improvements are needed, and they would, through that entitlement process, be required. We would do an environmental study and determine what improvements might be appropriate based on that assumption.
Okay, that helps. Thank you, Jason.
Yeah, is Mr. Grandy available?
Yes, this is Bob Grandy with Fair and Peers. My apologies, my camera is not working right now, but a couple of items I would mention. One, in terms of the overall trip generation, just by way of comparison, the original project that was approved was 2.27 million square feet. The projects that have either been constructed or the last PG&E building will total 1.02 million square feet, so less than half of the overall square footage. One of the things that I would mention that the projects we're looking at, particularly the Amazon project, has peak times that are well outside the normal peak because of the way the facility operates. What we see is, just in terms of the cycle, is the heavy trucks coming in just before midnight, unloading packages. That process happens kind of in a graveyard shift. The vans come in mid-morning. In fact, we've done counts on Devlin showing that the highest hour volume on Devlin's 10 to 11 in the morning. And that's those vans coming in to Amazon, primarily picking up the packages and leaving, and they're gone by 2 o'clock, and they're out doing their deliveries, and they come back around 8 in the evening. So a lot of the trips that we see are happening in those off-peak periods from this particular project. The other thing I would mention is the traffic study that we did and the analysis we do were based on counts that happened just before COVID. That's kind of been the industry standard to use pre-COVID volumes if we have them, and we do, for the intersections along SR 29. So all of our analysis is based on underlying counts that were pre-COVID. Director Smithies is correct. The added trips from the projects are based on ITE trip rates, and those are all pre-COVID. So we're doing all of our analysis of the intersections based on pre-COVID volumes and trip rates. The last thing I'll mention is what we've seen really over the last couple of years is overall vehicle trips being made during COVID didn't go down. And in fact, to the extent they did go down maybe very early in the process, they're back up to the similar volumes as pre-COVID. The difference is that the commute windows, with folks working from home, the commute periods are down slightly, but the midday periods are up. So I think back to Councilmember Joseph's, comment earlier about, the peak extending earlier in the PM. Part of that is what we see the sort of phenomenon with respect to work from home on the residential side of trip making, and more midday trips from folks who are at home and making shorter trips closer to home as opposed to the longer commute trips. Those would be the items that I would maybe add to the discussion around that question. And then the last thing maybe what I would add is that this particular improvement project that's been identified was designed specifically to move fairly quickly through the Caltrans encouragement permit process and be something that could be implemented fairly quickly. As the projects get larger, they take longer periods of time to go through the Caltrans process. So it's a very delicate balancing act. Basically, you have a $3 million cap in terms of the value of improvements within the Caltrans right of way. When you surpass that, you're into a much longer process in terms of going through the permitting effort.
Hey, Bob, this is Jason. Would you mind touching on a little bit on the specific improvement and maybe where we think the level of service at this intersection is today versus where it would be after the interim improvement?
Sure. One of the things I would say about the level of service at South Kelly is it is influenced. The issue that we have at South Kelly is more in the PM peak hour than the AM, because the phenomenon is, as you know, is that we have the heaviest traffic in northbound in the morning and southbound in the evening. That's where really you see that queuing. So that in the morning, that the end of the queue is sort of about Napa Junction and north of there, which is where this intersection is located. It's less congested than south of Napa Junction. In the evening, traffic backs up from Donaldson sometimes all the way back to Airport. And so that congestion that really is more upstream or starts upstream in the PM peak has a tendency to limit, or if you will, or that queuing increases delays at the intersections that are downstream of that intersection. And so what we see in terms of the level of service is really a PM peak hour impact at the intersection with South Kelly. We do see a pretty significant benefit because right now you're looking at the South Kelly approach in the west leg is only 2 lanes. And when you get to the one lane in each direction, we get to the intersection, is a very short left turn pocket as you're approaching SR 29. What we're looking at is going from 2 lanes to 4 lanes. And that provides on that segment of South Kelly, and that provides a pretty substantial benefit. We anticipate in the future, the other leg, the east leg of South Kelly, which is on the other side of the intersection, will need to be improved kind of in a comparable way, but that's not that kind of improvement's really not driven by development on the west side so much as it is traffic that is coming down South Kelly wanting to make a left turn to go south on SR 29. But we do see a substantial improvement as a result not only of the widening of the South Kelly leg, but the addition of the southbound right turn lane and lengthening of that northbound left turn pocket, because with the issue we have with the northbound left turn pocket, it's fairly short. You get vehicles that queue back and they suddenly are blocking the northbound through lanes. So all of those are intended to make the intersection operate better. And we do see a kind of a substantial benefit from the combination of those package of improvements. And it's predominantly in the PM peak hour where we're improving conditions.
If I can ask a follow-up or a follow-up comment, I think from this discussion, and I appreciate it, I think what I'm seeing is, on the one hand, Napa Logistics is more or less built out. We know what their traffic demand is, and I think we need to figure out a way to say, okay, you're covered. The problem is that Giovannone is going to generate a whole lot of something, and even the Panattoni piece could generate a whole lot of something. And we really don't know if the improvements we're talking about are appropriate, not because of what we don't know about Napa Logistics, but because we don't know about Panattoni and Giovannone. And so I'm in a situation where I'm now saying, maybe we shouldn't try to hurry up and do this, because I'm not sure what we should be doing. If there was some way of figuring out what the additional trip demand from those 2 projects might be, so that we can validate just how much capacity these improvements we're talking about today would provide. And even if Giovannone isn't ready to reimburse us, or if they're going to go through the environmental grinding mill, and they may not be ready for 2 or 3 years, it's in our best interest to figure out what ultimately is going to happen. If we have access to their environmental analysis, whether it's adopted or not, it's still good science, that we need to do what we can do to figure out whether these improvements are necessary in the long run. They certainly will help right now, but they may be it may be the classic example where you pave the road and next week PG&E wants to tear it up to replace a line. So I'd like to do something in which we give Napa Logistics a green light that says, okay, you're done. Thank you for your efforts. And frankly, the developer has done quite a bit for this community. And I want to thank him, and I don't want to tie him up any longer than necessary. But on the flip side, I really want to make sure the improvements we actually do reflect where we're going to end up being, because I don't want to have to tear everything back up and say, well, now we got to put that extra lane in. So I don't know how you translate that into an action item, but that's what I would like to see.
Yeah, Councilmember Joseph, you're exactly right. And I don't know, we didn't exactly say this at the beginning, but the proposed item tonight accomplishes everything that you're talking about. So Napa Logistics will be able to close out their project. They will provide compensation to the city before we have already contemplated a project in the 5-year CIP. But before we move forward with a final design of that project, we're going to continue and do our own site-specific EIR, particularly on that project. And it may not be an EIR, it might be a neg deck, but we're going to do our own site-specific CEQA just right on that particular project. And we're going to anticipate all the things that you're talking about, and the timing of the things you're talking about, and having the best understanding about the timing of those other projects, so that the project that we build and then we present to the council is the best scenario, knowing what we know about development and timing. And so that's part of the reason that staff has come to this recommendation is, rightfully so, the developer has completed their project, they'd like to move on. We don't exactly know what project should happen here. We know the project that if they were in a vacuum and they were the only project, we know exactly what would happen, but they're not in a vacuum. There are other things happening. And so it is fair to have them be able to close their project out, provide an equivalent compensation for what is the effect of their project, but knowing this isn't in a vacuum, there are other projects, and we're gonna have to analyze all of that to make sure that the thing we do is appropriate. And it may still be we go with the interim project because of the uncertainties around the Giovannoni and the Panettone projects. If they're 2, 3, 5, 10, 20 years out, it may not make sense to do the ultimate. It may never make sense to do the ultimate, but if they're in a much shorter time frame, we'll be bringing that information back to the council. So the action tonight is only to allow the developer, who has done a lot for this community, to move on and to provide us compensation. We're not approving the design of their project or any sort of construction or anything like that. So all the things that you spoke about, Councilor Joseph, will be accomplished by this action tonight.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Holly, I appreciate your comments on that. I would suggest what council colleagues over and drive the west side of South Kelly Road. It's like one continuous rumble strip. The road isn't in that bad a shape. Private from time to time. And I've also noticed that with the increased traffic with the related development out there, it's deteriorated even further. So I would suggest probably we could look at something there as an interim improvement, at least on the surface of the road. Maybe the turn lanes, separate out what's happening on 29 from what's happening on the west side, South Kelly. I think would be beneficial, but yeah, drive it. It's a very bad condition in that road right now. With that, Councilmember Oro.
Yeah. So what are we left with if we approve this tonight? I mean, what if we wanted to build that big intersection like it was supposed to be planned in 2015? Where does that leave the current developer and the owner of this?
Well, so yeah, if there is a reason to build that ultimate project, the reason will be because all those other developments are coming online. Giovannoni and Panettone are essentially filling the void of the trips that never materialized with the Napa Logistics project. So if that analysis that we do subsequently shows, when you add up Napa Logistics, Panettone, and Giovannoni, you probably do need the ultimate, and we come to that conclusion later, then we say, okay, that's the project that moves forward. We will have taken, a portion of those costs for the ultimate project would have been paid by Napa Logistics per this amended agreement. The entitlement process for those other projects would provide for the payment or reimbursement of those expenses. And that, if you thought about it maybe as a pie chart of who contributed to the project, it's a much more balanced sort of equation, because each of those projects, would roughly have contributed a similar amount. And it wouldn't have been, 100% being weighted onto Napa Logistics. So If I don't know that we've reached a point where we know that the ultimate improvements are needed because we haven't gone through and added up all the potential trip generations of those projects, and the timing of those projects becomes particularly important. So, whether or not the Panattoni project ever happens, it still remains to be seen. They have a development agreement that expires. I don't know if Bill's going to go from his memory or not, but it's, I think, only 5 years. It was a fairly short development agreement, and then their entitlement goes away. So, these things have a way of getting approved and never happening. And so we're going to have to go through and analyze all of those potential projects to decide whether the timing of the ultimate improvements is ever needed, and if so, when, and if not, does it make sense to do the interim? Hopefully that answered your question, Councilman Wara.
Yeah, meaning you could build that road now as proposed tonight. And then as these other projects come along, they have to improve it. We dig it up and make it better.
Yes, that can play out exactly that way as well. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Council ready for public comment on this matter? Seeing a lot of heads nodding up and down. Do we have anybody for public comment?
I have no hands. Oh, I do have one. Justin Hamilton Hole.
Okay.
Go ahead, Justin.
Teresa, good evening, everybody. This is a special meeting today because of night out. I think I want to make a comment. Erica, I think Erica doing a lot of work, and I seen her working on both sides in American and Napa, because I think Erica working very hard to get the new highway going on Kelly Road. So I'm gonna shout out Erica. You're doing a great job.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Justin.
Anybody else?
I have no other hands raised.
Okay, we'll close public comment at this time. Return to council for discussion and action. There is a resolution if council so decides.
Well, if no one else wants to, I'll make a motion. We adopt resolution number 2022 next in order. A resolution of the City Council of the City of American Canyon authorizing the city manager to execute a termination of amended and restated improvement agreement and first amendment to subdivision improvement and reimbursement agreement for the Napa Logistics Park Phase 2 project.
I'll second.
Motion second, roll call, please.
Councilmember Washington,
Yes.
Councilmember Oro,
Yes.
Councilmember Joseph,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Abadamos,
Yes.
and Mayor Garcia.
Yes, thank you, council.
And I'd like to second the mayor's comment that the road really is shot. And if there was some way to throw a little bit of asphalt on there just to buy us some time, that would be great.
I think it's going to need a little more than that, but thank you. Okay, moving on to our agenda, management staff oral reports. Mr. Hawley.
We actually don't have a need tonight, Mayor.
Okay, very good. And moving on then to mayor council comments, committee reports, and following that is future agenda items. Anything from council for committee reports? No, we'll defer that till the next meeting. All right. Any future agenda items to be discussed this evening?
Yeah, Mayor, we have a couple of items that are noted on the agenda, and then if council had others, certainly feel free to bring that up. Both items 5 and 6. I'll let City Clerk take item number 5, Teresa.
Yep. Okay. So this evening, the purpose for item 5 is to determine whether to schedule a special meeting regarding Measure J arguments. At our last meeting, council accepted the certification of the Green Island Road Initiative petition and placed it on the ballot as Measure J. Election Code 9282A allows the legislative body the option to author an argument against the ordinance. If council does want to author an argument against Measure J, it will be necessary to hold a special meeting before August 9th to discuss and vote on council member or members to author the argument. So at this time, we're asking for council to decide if they would like to schedule the special meeting.
Is there an interest in scheduling a special meeting regarding this?
Teresa, this is for the argument opposing or the argument in favor, right? It's not just the argument opposing.
It is only for the argument opposing. So if you'd like, I could
Okay,
read.
because the applicant in theory would be doing the argument in favor.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I think, as we've had discussions about this, we're letting the people decide, and I'm not sure the council should take that vote. And I won't be taking an opposing position or even deciding in a for position at this point.
Yeah, I'm in alignment with David, Councilmember Oro, that I want to hear from what the residents have to say.
Yeah.
I don't want to take a position right now.
I think it speaks for itself, frankly, for me.
Okay. Thank
Doesn't seem
you.
to be any interest in that. Okay.
And I think there are members of the community that are already verbalizing their opposition. So I think there will be an opportunity for the voters to read both sides of the argument without the council getting involved.
What happens if nobody submits an argument opposing? Then it's just going to be an argument in favor and a neutral analysis?
Well, there is a process where different groups or individuals can submit arguments. As city council, you would have the priority for your argument to be on the ballot if you choose to make one. If you do not, then others can make an argument opposing, and we would go by that criteria in selecting which one would go on the ballot.
I believe there's going to be an argument in opposing it. It's from one of the speakers that when we had that discussion on Measure J.
Okay.
They're looking for a fundraising event to raise the necessary money to be able to file. But I'm sure there's going to be an argument opposing it from a citizens group.
Okay, good. Then we'll have one. But if no one submitted an argument opposing, then it would only be the argument in favor of that's printed in the ballot.
Okay. Mark,
right.
I think Joseph is spelled wrong in your little Zoom square.
Hey,
Okay. Now on the committee, see the agenda. What was the next one we had?
Thank you, Mayor. The next item is agenda item number 6. This item is a report from an ad hoc committee that the council created back in February, and they, in response to a resolution the council adopted related to a climate emergency. The council also directed the formation of this ad hoc committee and gave a deadline of 6 months to submit a report. And the committee did turn in their report at the end of last week. And so we felt it was important to honor the work that they had done. And so we amended the agenda to include this committee report. We do have scheduled at our September 6th council meeting a discussion. And this is also based on the direction from our last council meeting where the council was interested in the Countywide Climate Action Committee and other issues related to that. So our intent was to bring back this report in conjunction with some input as it relates to the Countywide Climate Action Committee and also some of the issues that Councilmember Washington raised at our last meeting. So we wanted to, like I said, honor the committee's work. They turned it in by the deadline, but really the time that staff is anticipating scheduling this for a discussion would be on September 6th, Mayor.
Okay.
and we also need to provide a response to the grand jury report as well. That could all be lumped together in one combo.
That's
Right.
correct. That's the intent of that item.
Right.
We'll include that.
Very good. Thank you. Okay.
Just listed on in item 7 are just future agenda items that are on there just for information purposes, but we don't have any other items, Mayor.
Thank you.
One item, we just got a note about the appeal on SDG 217 has been withdrawn. So does that mean it will be coming to us for an approval, or what happens to that?
This is Bill. I've looked at that. I've looked at the letter, and I've contacted, I'm going to call it the applicant, and preliminarily discerned that the agreement that's reached does not affect any of the conditions of approval of the Planning Commission. So my first instance is that means that the commission of the Planning Commission is reinstated. but I will certainly examine it to ensure that that's the conclusion.
So possibly this issue just goes away, the project's approved,
Right.
and something will happen. All right, that's
Right.
good too. All right, thank you.
Okay. Very good. Future agenda items, council. Anything there for tonight? No? All right, then going through our agenda, we have concluded our business for this evening. We will stand adjourned for National Night Out and go out and meet our community and engage with our neighbors and community members. So have a great evening, folks. Thank
Glad
you.
American Canyon see you out there.
Yeah.
All right.